Next week, we could see it. The House Republicans' first impeachment hearing is set into President Biden's ties to his family business dealings. They say they've already uncovered mountains of evidence of corruption.
This hearing coming up next week is going to actually lay the parameters of what we can get at and what we can't get at, in the sense that we have an expanded authority with the impeachment inquiry.
We have gone through investigations. There is a plethora of evidence of crimes that have been committed by Joe Biden's family.
This impeachment inquiry is about one thing and one thing only, and that is providing answers for the American people. Nothing more, nothing less.
Democrats and the White House, as you might imagine, have a very different take.
It is a no evidence impeachment inquiry. It is baseless. There's no evidence. Even Republicans in Congress have said there's no evidence. It doesn't exist. And so that's the thing that the American people need to also realize. There is nothing there.
Leading next week's hearing, Kentucky Congressman James Comer, the House Oversight Chairman. Great to have you. I don't know if you just heard what the White House press secretary was saying, but she said even Republicans say there's no evidence. What does she mean?
I have no idea what she means. There are one or two disgruntled Republicans that are trying to claim there's no evidence. But at the end of the day, the majority of Americans, poll after poll shows, realize there's mountains of evidence. Let's start with the fact that we've discovered the Biden family has taken in over $20 million from foreign nationals that came through a series of shell companies that were then laundered down to the Bidens in incremental payments. My question to the White House is, what did the Bidens do to receive that $20 million? They can't answer it. They try to act like it didn't happen, like it didn't exist, but it did. $20 million. We heard from the IRS whistleblowers that they didn't pay a penny of taxes on this money, that this investigation was leading to Joe Biden. We found, even though Joe Biden said he never met with or spoke to or had any knowledge of any of these people who were mysteriously wiring millions of dollars to the Bidens, we have found through our deposition process that he spoke to every one of them on the phone over a dozen times. So there's mountains of evidence. We can talk about the text messages, the emails. We can talk about the bank receipts. And that's what we're going to talk about next week in our first impeachment inquiry hearing.
You know, a few weeks ago, the last time you and I spoke, you said those bank records were the things that were really going to show those shell companies. And now you have that information. And I do want to ask this with the special counsel. And with what's going on with Hunter Biden, you know, planning to sue the IRS and really fighting back against some pretty bad charges against him now, tax fraud. I'm wondering, does any of that block your opportunity to subpoena, to get more information?
Well, we're going to find out. I certainly hope not. Call me skeptical, Harris, but I believe that thus far, Weiss hasn't demonstrated an ability to be fair in this. We know that he was charged with lying on a gun application. If I listed the 12 crimes that Hunter Biden committed, that would be a distant 12th in order of most serious to least serious. And ironically, that's the one crime that you can't tie Joe Biden into. So we don't know if this is the first step for David Weiss or if this is just an effort to say we're doing something. Therefore, when we go to court to get the Biden's personal bank records, is the special counsel going to stand up and say, Your Honor, we have an ongoing investigation.
Yes.
Please don't allow them to have any more damaging evidence against my client.
Yeah, that is the phrase of the day for them. I do want to get to this. We were talking about people who might not be on board. Representative Ken Buck, I'm going to ask my team to show us that. This is an op-ed in the Washington Post from him. My fellow Republicans, one disgraceful impeachment does not deserve another. And Ohio Senator J.D. Vance has this warning to all of his Republican colleagues.
I think it could backfire on Republicans if we go further than the evidence. There are very credible pieces of evidence. We don't know if they're true, but there are credible pieces of evidence that suggest the President of the United States used his prior office to enrich himself and his family. Now, if that's true, then certainly he should be impeached. And whether it hurts us or not is not the right question. I think we have to follow the evidence. And if we get too far ahead of the evidence, then yeah, I think the American people will penalize us.
Your reaction?
I agree completely with J.D. Vance. Look, this is an impeachment inquiry. It's unfortunate that we've had to go here, Harris, but this family, the Biden family, this administration, the Biden administration, and his legal team have blocked and obstructed us at every turn. Yet we continue to uncover more findings, more evidence of wrongdoing by the Biden family. So this is the next step in impeachment inquiry. We're not talking about having an impeachment vote. This isn't an impeachment trial. This is an impeachment inquiry where we have every tool at our disposal to be able to get a speedy trial if and when we head to court over these personal bank records and these pseudonym emails. And it allows us to have a better standing when the when the cabinet agencies refuse to turn over information. So we're not having an impeachment hearing, we're having an impeachment inquiry because we've gotten to the point to where there's so much evidence of wrongdoing by the Biden family, and Joe Biden has lied so many times to the American people about his knowledge of his family's wrongdoing.
Real quickly, just a yes or no, would you be willing to, or are you planning to subpoena people as part of the inquiry, or are you waiting to get all of those mountains of evidence? Can you subpoena before that? We're
following the bank records. We're following the money. So the next subpoena will be for Hunter Biden and Jim Biden's personal bank records. If that evidence leads to individuals needing to be subpoenaed, whether it be Hunter Biden or Joe Biden, we will do that.
All right. Chairman, thank you very much. I look forward to any updates you have.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.